Could you share with us your incredible background and what you and your team do for Sweetgreen?
Yeah, certainly. I think before I dive in, I just wanted to thank you for that warm, cozy welcome that you've given me, and really for the opportunity to be here to speak with you, and all the folks that have tuned in today. Um, yeah, my career after undergraduate studies in philosophy, go figure, uh, took root in finance, which was really mergers and acquisitions work for a global telecom company. If you do a little poking around in my LinkedIn profile, you'll see that I started actually as an executive assistant out of undergrad, and then I immediately re-enrolled myself into extension coursework at UCLA to really beef up my financial statement analysis capabilities as well as my accounting acumen. I'm not one of those rare gems who came out of the womb knowing exactly what they wanted to do. It took a little bit of fishing and finding my way. And what I am though, I think is somebody who has been willing to take calculated risks in my career. And so I think that's an example of doing so. I really set expectations early about where I was hoping my next step was going to be in my career. And I, got a commitment from the VP that I supported to provide that advancement and that platform if I had proved myself going in. And oh my, did that work out for me, that opportunity. So my time in M&A really afforded me the chance to travel the globe extensively and participate in some of the most exciting and complicated business ventures. But that said, a few years in, I realized that marketing was really my calling. What called to me, I'd been exposed to it in some of the due diligence processes in the transactions that I worked on. So I went back to grad school and heavied up on marketing specialization coursework as a part of my MBA. Though I think I should say that the grounding in business performance, measurement, and strategy that M&A afforded me really have played a pivotal role in my approach to initiatives that I undertake here and subsequent, in prior roles subsequent to that time in M&A. And I really have believed that those foundations have been pivotal to my success thereafter. So after business school, I quickly developed a specialization in database marketing, retention, and loyalty. So I went to work for Harrah's Casinos, and that position and that company could not have been a more fertile training ground. Their total rewards program and CRM journey orchestration was truly best in class. So, I've subsequently built on that foundation at other Fortune 100 companies like Spectrum, which was formerly Time Warner Cable when I was there, and the Walt Disney Company. And I think from those positions, I really added considerable project management skills as well as brand building muscle and brand protection, protecting brand equity and preventing brand dilution. I think that role really put those tools in my toolkit. So moving on to Sweetgreen, it's really been my first opportunity to actually bring that knowledge to bear in building a CRM function from the ground up, which is largely what I joined to do almost 4 years ago. Since my tenure here, we built out the MarTech stack to support robust cross-channel journeys and personalization. Of course, our data and software engineers are heavily involved in all that work. Thinking through ways to drive loyalty that resonate with our customers has been a primary focus for me here. Architecting solutions, architecting teams, empowering those teams with the tools and the decision-making authority that they need have really been, that's occupied a central role in my contribution to the company. I think now more than ever, really, as I've taken on a broader scope at Sweetgreen. So more recently, my team encompasses more top of funnel growth levers in addition to the lower funnel. So now that includes paid media and advertising, new restaurant opening support, and integrated brand campaigns across the various functions, in addition, to my specialty of customer retention and engagement. I think the work that we do to support new restaurant openings is pivotal, and that is the same across existing markets where we have greater saturation already in those markets, or when we enter particularly a new market where Sweetgreen has not been heretofore. So we put a lot of energy into developing toolkits, playbooks, so that we ensure that we're building and learning on our successes and our learn forward moments for each of these entries. At Sweetgreen, Insights is also a function that sits within marketing. So, I help to shape that roadmap and ensure that we're basing as many decisions as possible, basically, on a foundation of customer needs, preferences, pain points, being aware of all of those inputs. At Sweetgreen, marketing is also really deeply involved in product management in both aspects, I'd say, of what we mean when we say product, what definition we're talking about. So it means digital product by virtue of my team's close collaboration with our tech and digital leaders in the company, but it also means for us culinary product. So on my team, we have a menu product marketing role that is responsible for ensuring that we refine our menu based on customer and performance insights. And it's kind of akin to a brand management function at a CPG company, I'd say. That individual is responsible for menu item merchandising, they're intimately locked in with our supply chain, so that we are, managing the two ends of the scale of supply and demand.
Wow. So it is very clear that, in the role that you occupy today, that that foundation with the transferable skill set, obviously the liberal arts background, philosophy, and go figure, I got my degree in English writing. And it's benefited me to think broadly as well. And then you talk about driving loyalty and empowering your teams with the tools and decision-making authority, and creating things like, insights that have toolkits and playbooks so that you can continue to, iterate on those successes, and the collaboration with tech and other functions. I think it's absolutely kind of phenomenal to hear. These are the things that are day to day. And so one of the things I want to kind of hear from you is, all of those things are learned over time. With us, this panel being so much about women in marketing, what does being a leader mean to you, and where did you pick up all of those skills?
Yeah. I really, I think, find it difficult to locate the words to encapsulate really what is a really rich and elusive quality in that leadership or being a leader. But I'll give it a shot. I guess first I want to say that I actually see leadership embodied at every level of seniority and responsibility, particularly in a company like Sweetgreen, which is very entrepreneurial at heart. So I think leadership is really a special alchemy. It's certainly in my mind, it means a willingness to do the hard work, right? To assume ownership of something as if it was your bank account financing the operation. Have that kind of passion, commitment to results, leading by example as well. Not verbal instruction, not, as much dictation or anything like that. I think it also involves ensuring success is delivered by transmitting that zeal and that sense of ownership, in like a blast radius to others around you. It's paramount to me that the same way that we work to resolve customer pain points, I think that leaders have to work to resolve internal team member pain points to unlock velocity, cohesion, happiness of the unit, figuring out how to enable all members to do their job, right? Removing roadblocks, things like that. I think leaders have a special obligation to be solution-minded, not blame-minded. Figuring out where points of failure are, certainly, but so that you can, work to rectify them, and so that you ensure they're not singular points of failure, that you've thought about redundancy and resourcing across the team. I think my favorite leaders, really, they think 2 steps ahead. They're taking risks, yes, but they're also contingency planning the crap out of things. I think leadership at its finest comes from a genuine and authentic place where that all tides rise mentality is really embraced. That a sense of trust is propagated by a leader demonstrating integrity. I think that's really fundamental for longevity as a leader, and to enact a real magnetism. Forming a sort of glue to the unit, I feel like an electron proton electromagnetic force, that trust, that integrity, and a two-way communication can build, I think, are fundamental to really effective leadership. I think leaders come in all size, shapes, personalities, all sorts, across the spectrum too, of introverted and extroverted. I love that diversity when I see it, really, because it sends a signal that you don't have to fit a certain expected model, to grow in scope. I also admire a really strong sense of drive, particularly when it's like an against the odds variety. I'm really inspired by people who commit. They kick a few proverbial doors or glass ceilings down. The people who look fear in the eye and go, yeah, okay, but I'm doing this anyway. I think acting in a leadership capacity is really not something that felt natural to me early on. But now, and as my career has progressed, I'm leaning more into it, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to do it. And I hear that in some of the panelists before me, that there is that take that risk, that step change, tune out the voice that may be telling you something otherwise, and really think about what brought you to where you are and the value that you have to contribute. I think my responsibility as a leader, in turn, being given this opportunity, is to figure out how to contribute more and more with my broadened scope, and really to figure out how to do the same with the teams that have entrusted that kind of opportunity to me. I want to foster those leadership principles in whatever capacity I can to those on my team and those around me.
Wow. Okay. So I think this is just kind of phenomenal as a response. I have to tell you, I just, there's so much that I just took away from that answer. I think what struck me immediately is that you say leadership is embodied at every level. I think that is such an important and empowering statement to make. And for each individual coming into whatever role they have, and to take ownership of it, and to invest. And I think that's it's just how empowering is that when you talk about, leaders being willing to do the hard work, when your peers and those on your team see that you are as committed to doing the work as they are, and having the passion, and that you're leading by example. It just blows me away. And I just loved everything about what you said. Kind of towards the end of your statement, you said, leadership didn't feel natural in the beginning, but you took the risk, you tuned out the voice that may have said otherwise, and then, you found yourself succeeding. And I just think, awesome. Like, that's exactly why we're having this panel today, and like why we're talking about all of this. And again, yes, it's mirrored in a lot of the other earlier sessions, but absolutely something that I think deserves to be said again. Kind of with all of that said, you've talked about what being a leader means to you. Tell me a little bit about those who mentored you along the way, and how you mentor others.
Yeah. I was not one who leaned into like formal mentorships early on. I think I wasn't a person who was, again, who had a really robust built-in network, or even understood that that was something I ought to be considering. I was heads down in the books, focused on whatever was happening, as opposed to thinking about all of the things in the periphery, or all of those tools, that may be around to help me succeed. Also, as an introvert, it kind of felt like scaling a mountain of razors to like reach out to people and, and form those relationships, and again, have that courage, particularly the more steps there were between me and that individual, right? The harder that initiating that kind of conversation really felt. I did, however, really gravitate to women who'd carved out a niche for themselves in companies where I was working early on, and it was obvious they were doing something right, even if I couldn't, exactly understand what it was, or how they were doing it. Some of those women actually ended up, as a result of me taking those steps, or me having certain organic conversations, they were willing to help me either kind of behind the scenes, or coach me through certain novel, challenging situations that I might, encounter. They also like literally showed me that there were spaces for females, right, as leaders in the places where I was employed. So what's interesting is that most of those early examples had a certain hardness, I would say, or a shell to them, to be competitive in really male-dominated fields. I think it was about ensuring themselves a share of voice. But it was never to an extreme. They were still certainly approachable, and had retained the magic that made them uniquely them. I also found their sense of like pick themselves up and dust them off, whatever may have happened, and you get right back at it. When things didn't go according to plan, I really found that noteworthy, and a shining light. They were definitely experts in their position, who exuded confidence, confidence that I desired to emulate at that time. Although, now looking back on reflection, I can recognize where I must have believed in my own capacity to succeed by the choices, right? By the positions that I put myself into. More recently, I've actually really enjoyed encountering female presences that I'm able to learn from as well, that are really more on a spectrum, as opposed to, fitting a certain type of mold, or approachability, or things like that. Some amazing male leaders have acted as mentors, as sounding boards, as guides on my journey. The mentorships I mentioned that have really been kind of the most important and powerful for me have been very organic. Their nature also, the way, the kinds of things that we're discussing has really evolves as I do and as they do. There's always, of course, room for like advice, but I think the nature of the conversation, what you're discussing, matures as your career does. So I wouldn't go so far as to say now I have my own, personal board of directors or advisors. But it's helpful, to know that, and I think it's a savvy move to know that there are mentors out there who've opened their doors or their mobile phones to me, and I know that whatever I may be going through or dealing with or trying to solve, they can lend a hand by telling me how they've dealt with it. It's also, I was thinking about this. It's also not lost on me that these are very binary categorizations. And I'm grateful that gender identity is now, in the broader discussion. It's becoming more and more of a conversation topic, prompted by the LGBTQ communities. And as I've said before, I think people really fall on spectrums, and I'm energized by that inclusivity. I think I've carved a space out for myself because I have a few qualities, and because I've seemed to have found something that is very left-right brain, which is the type of work that I really enjoy. So I guess my qualities are I'm highly intellectually curious. My hunger to understand how things work is borders on insatiable. And it exists across a swath of subjects, particularly at the atomic and subatomic level. I love particle physics. I find many subjects fascinating. And I think that desire to know means that I take the time to learn something, which in turn, I think enables me to speak from more of a position of knowledge and to present better solutions operating from that position. And allows me to hopefully transmit some of that to my team. But it's not all top down, right? It's bi-directional, like we were talking about earlier. Learning from my team is every bit as important. I think, I've had to grow as I've grown. I've had to grow more and more comfortable operating from a position of ambiguity, and leaning into my team to teach me as they become subject matter experts. I think a second quality about me is I'm like a production machine. I don't know how else to characterize it. Really, like, I love to make contributions. I love to think strategically. Delivering something that's successful and makes a customer, happy, that adds value to whatever circumstance I'm in. I derive a lot of, of enjoyment from that process, from that contribution process, and seeing things ship and succeed. I was never one whose parents applied a lot of scholastic pressure or anything like that, but I think I was born with a serious innate drive. Again, not sure where I was headed, but I knew I was going somewhere at least. And I think my natural thought patterns, other helpful aspects, they encompass a lot of things like game theory. If then thinking, I can, it has applications like being able to not necessarily read a room, but understand the motivations and what is going on, in all of the participants' minds, potentially, in the decision makers, who are in a conference room together. It also, I think, applies to thinking about the potential outcomes of marketing campaigns that we might do, how to future-proof strategies, and again, contingency plan, which I said earlier. And also, I think I really embrace, it can be cliche, but I really embrace like a win-win-win mentality. I think it makes you work harder, because the solution that is the win for the customers, for the company, for everyone involved, is not necessarily the first one or the easiest one to uncover. But I really want what's best for others, what's best for the communities, the planet, our customers, Sweetgreen, all of those things. So you do have to push a little harder to find those pathways, but I think when you do it, it feels magical, like nothing else.
That's awesome. And I think this is something you said very early on, I think is really important for us all to talk about and think about. Like, everyone doesn't have formal mentors, and as a fellow introvert, it too, for me, as I started out, it was very hard to initiate those type of conversations. And I love how you said you organically found those people, that carved out a niche for themselves and said, you know, what are they doing that I can leverage or pattern myself after, or even go to for coaching behind the scenes. Because again, mentors, there are formal mentors, there are informal mentors, and then there's just things that you pick up along the way, and individuals who you see as examples who in their own way become mentors. So I think
Yeah,
that's,
and
yeah.
sometimes it's just a question to open a door. Even, it's not a formal, would you be interested, in mentoring me all the way along my career? It's just how, why did you do that? Or there are little things that become, again, sort of breadcrumbs that lead you somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been kind of the case in my career as well. I've had a opportunity to work with both some great women and men leaders who, just in asking the question and initiating the conversation, I've learned so much along the way. And I think that's a fantastic, like you said, the curiosity, being willing to ask the questions is a
Yeah.
quality that opens up so many doors for an individual. And I think that's just very important for us to think about, no matter, especially as we're starting out. You talked about too, kind of like this, insatiability for knowledge, like, the interest in particle physics, the bidirectional learning, understanding that knowledge is passed, not just top down, but from the bottom up as well, and understanding that there's opportunities to learn from everyone within that ecosystem or environment. So I know you started to talk a little bit about future proofing, which obviously, like, that's a big topic right now in marketing. So I want to pivot a little bit and jump into some of the marketing questions that we all kind of have on our mind as we move into this new future where we are all trying to figure out what this means for us. So how do you, as a marketer, when we talk about future proofing, measure the success of our initiatives, of your initiatives, and understand your audience?
Yeah. So, as you might imagine, based on that spiel about my background, performance marketing is really, my default area of comfort. I'm known to bust into questions about control groups, either real or by proxy in conversation. Regarding our audience at Sweetgreen, we've done extensive research on, about who our customer cohorts are, their psychographics, habits. Interestingly, our customers over-index on certain areas that are outside of their, culinary and dietary preferences. So things like prioritizing being true to oneself, meeting others with different backgrounds and perspectives and treating them with kindness, a sense of optimism, and maybe a little less surprising, incorporating a wellness practice. So, clearly our desire to know our customer extends way beyond just the way that they eat. I think you have to really understand how your products fit into a whole life, to market them effectively and to understand how to shape their roadmap. We have an insights function I mentioned in-house that supports it, not just marketing, but it supports a number of functions. It's an interdisciplinary group that makes sure multitudes of questions and strategies are grounded in information. We have also a product and UX design function that engages, in user testing and all those things to ensure that our experiences reduce friction and that they're surfacing really interactive, engaging, digital experiences that customers care about. We've even done things like conduct eye tracking studies to see how customers read our menu boards and ensure that they have maximum customer utility. We know where customers are on their journey with us, what are the moments of truth along that journey, where we better deliver, what the next best action is for them to take to deepen lifetime value. We use a range of KPIs, from more short-term ones like ARPU, digital penetration, ROAS, et cetera. We have longer-term ones like LTV that I just mentioned. I think measuring success, predicting outcomes, all those things now lean more and more into enabling tech and sophisticated mathematical approaches as we scale, things like machine learning, leaning into algorithms. So my inner nerd is very excited by those prospects, those advances. And from a brand perspective, we of course keep a pulse on NPS, other attitudinal metrics to make sure that we're not alienating our core that made us successful in the first place. We measure brand health, awareness, impressions, things top of the funnel among prospects too, to connect the dots, to make sure that our efforts to drive reach are bearing fruit, of course, and also that they are positioning us in a way that's true to our value proposition, and I think where we win. We also have other intake mechanisms for measurement, things like we have a customer voice score where customers, they'll rate their most recent order along a multitude of variables, and we respond to any statistically significant aberrations in those. So there's a direct line, which I think is very important, between the input of the issue identification and its rectification, right? So sometimes it's just as simple as getting the right folks in the room together with data that is ingestible and actionable, and then having an open mind as to how you might solution against those. And then it feels like in that way the next steps feel less controversial and easier to action against. The percentage of customers actually that create an account, we're fortunate. We've done a lot of hard work to get that, but that means the percentage of our customers that order digitally, we believe is high, and that helps us obviously from an insights perspective, because we can activate on first party data that uncover patterns and therein formulate more concrete plans of action and strategies.
Nice. So one of the kind of the interesting things that kind of stood out to me, even as we were kind of preparing for our talk, was that, really being rooted in performance, and understanding, customer cohorts, infographics, and where they highly index. One of the things you mentioned was that, you understand who they are, that they prioritize being true to oneself, meeting others with different backgrounds, and wellness as well. And so I think in our first conversation, I had even said, oh, I just saw that you rolled out, this new promotion, and there's the Naomi Osaka Bowl. And which I thought was fantastic, because she literally embodies the three things that you just talked about: being true to oneself, prioritizing her whole wellness, her mental health, and et cetera. And then just the different backgrounds, and treating others with kindness. So you obviously put a lot of work into understanding that audience and finding that exact right fit for it. So I just want to say kudos to you for that. I've been loving the billboards and kind of the media that I've seen around it. And that desire to know your customer and understand how it fits into their full life. You mentioned a couple of things like insights, ROAS, LTV, all things that, we do at Quantcast. So it's really interesting to hear from, the brand side, how you're activating on first party data. And that's obviously part of kind of that future proofing conversation. So all really, riveting to hear directly from a brand marketer as well. So that kind of takes me into, how you do what you do on a large scale. You mentioned you oversee marketing, and you work with many different teams that you just referenced on a very large scale. how are you prioritizing what works?
Well, there's the good old reliable, impact versus effort scalar quadrant approach, where the level of effort and the level of impact are sized to help you understand where to focus your energies, as well as I think it's important to identify pockets or windows of opportunity that may be time sensitive, that may be shrinking unless you act. I think time, energy, and resources had better be well spent to earn trust and I think greater responsibility across the org. Teams have to know that you don't send them on scavenger hunts after shiny objects, but rather guard their time as if it were your own. Um, and they need to have seats at the conference table where these decisions are being made. What's a priority to you may not be a priority to someone else. So figuring out all these different perspectives, I think really builds a stronger foundation. Consensus, of course, is always helpful where possible. I think employees really want to be on teams that make meaningful contributions, of course. So it has to be transparent what works, right? As we talked about before. So you need to get really clear on outcomes, predict, plan, test, measure, learn, repeat, right? The proverbial flywheel.
Yep.
And also the paths that are chosen had better fit within both the company ethos as well as the long-term strategic roadmap, or the likelihood increases that they won't work. All the efforts can't be against sure bets though, right? Or you run the risk of being too myopic and not moving at the pace of change. So you got to be agile, have a bit of a diversified approach, have things percolating in beta mode, and then you can place the fire accelerant on whatever seems to be sparking. But you can't have too many of those little fires going or you burn the house down. So I think it's helpful to put the right type of person, limit them and put the right type of person with certain characteristics in charge of those efforts. I also think your question has a really interesting dual interpretation. One that can, you can examine and propagate not just what's working in the market as measured by sales volume or market share, but also what's working within your company. So what dynamics and cooperative relationships are forming, get strategic about how you build teams and what's working. The best blueprinted plans or DOA without a high functioning group giving them life. So I think about project ownership, contribution, delineation, resourcing models, incentive and agency paradigms, now more than ever in my career. I think my success from here on out also becomes more and more about my ability really to elicit the best from others and set a well thought out strategy and then resource to enable it than it does about anything I might, personally deliver at this point.
Oh, that's fantastic. And that's something that's important for us to, absolutely remember as we move further up in our own responsibilities, that we take on a broader umbrella, and that's our opportunity to help others along the way and identify what their strengths are. So that's absolutely fantastic. I know we have a little bit of I think we're coming up because Ryan is on the chat now. So, but
yeah, Ryan, we have no Q&A, so I don't know if that gives us a little more time.
We're actually at the time. We hit the 40-minute window.
Oh goodness!
I know.
All right.
It goes like that, right?
It sure does. I thought there's no way you were gonna have 20 minutes left after we started this conversation, but wow.
Well, it's been an absolutely great conversation, Nicole. I think there's a lot of insights that we gleaned and got from your successes and Sweetgreen's success. Before we close, are there any additional words of wisdom that you'd like to quickly share?
I think really understanding, staying true to yourself, understanding, having a hunger for that understanding, a deeper insight, not just, when you are marketing something, thinking about not just product benefits, but the deeper emotive benefits, things like that. So, I think that would really just be my takeaway to anyone who's listening today, is to really get inquisitive, to find that, that courage in yourself, and take those leaps, and, lean into whatever, sources of support you can along the way. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Angelique. We appreciate this amazing conversation. We are going to move on to our next session right now. Let's bring to our virtual stage Mariana Espinosa, the VP of Marketing and International Trade with JP Morgan Chase. And we have an awesome moderator from Outfront Media. That's going to be Amanda Shepley, the Client and Agency Partnerships and Programmatic Lead. Amanda and Mariana are joining our live cast right now. Hey, how you doing today?
Hey there. Good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. We're still moving. We're still cooking on our day right now, and got a few more sessions, but I do want to turn things over to you so we can jump right into this next discussion, Amanda. Sound good?
Thanks, Ryan. That was a hard act to follow. Those ladies wouldn't quit. Hey, Mariana, how are you?
Hi, Amanda. Doing great. Thanks.
It's good to see you again. I feel like old friends since yesterday.
Yes, definitely.
How's your day so far?
It's been great. It's sunny, warm, almost summer day in Chicago, so you can't beat it. You can't beat this time of year.
I know that time of year in that region. I think they say if it weren't for the winters, everybody would live there. And if it wasn't for the summers, nobody would live there. So it's like you've got kind of like dueling seasons there. We're a little bit, I'm in New York, we're a little bit rainy and overcast here, but not too bad. A nice break from the heat. So let's dig right into it. I had the pleasure of speaking with you yesterday, getting to know you a little bit on a personal level, and I'd love to share some of what we discussed yesterday with the group at large. Before we get into that, I did want to say that I was really honored to be moderating a panel on today's discussion because the theme is so near and dear to my heart, women in marketing. And one of the things that I like so much about it is it really is an opportunity for us to inspire kind of the next generation of female and women marketers. So having a conversation like this where we can dig really into your personal journey, your career journey, your successes, your advice and guidance that you would give to not only your younger self, but all the young women that are coming up in the industry right now. I think it's just a great topic. It's such an important stage to have, and you've got such great experience to share. So I'm really excited to dig into this with you. So to start off, why don't you give us a little bit about yourself, your background, your career journey, just kind of set the foundation to your present time in your career so we can all understand where you've been along your career journey, and then we can dig into a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely. So I've spent the majority of